Well, hello there, and what is going on? You are listening to TAGSPodcast, aka Talk About Gay Sex Podcast, and guess what? This is the 600th episode of TAGSPodcast. I am your host, Steve V, and in this next hour, we are really excited to present to you interviews with all of the hosts, and I'm talking about Jeremy, Lincoln, Teddy, and of course, Kodi. We have so much to get into on this episode, but if I could just reflect for just a minute or two on the last 600 episodes, we started in my living room here, and we started really with just one co-host, and that was Jeremy Ross Lopez, and soon realized that we would benefit from three hosts, at least to begin with, and we started with only one or two topics, and after doing that for a while, quickly realized that the show would benefit from hot topics, hot LGBTQ topics, and of course, sex and relationship advice. And along the way, sex health for our community. And it's just really evolved over 600 episodes. We started with one show. Now we do two shows a week. Tags Live is every Wednesday. And over the course of the time, we've done live shows at a bar here in New York City, which was great. We've shot a TV pilot. We have brought in new hosts. I'm talking about Lincoln and, of course, Teddy. We've experimented with our own sexuality over 600 episodes, all the way to many of us being in relationships, but always being really honest and open about our sexuality, our past experiences, because we realize that that is the way to connect with you. We've had so many special guests over 600 episodes. I'm talking about the good doctor himself, Dr. Goldstein, trans advocate, Reverend Kyle Applegate, Tristan Shoecraft of Mr., porn star Boomer Banks, drag superstar Mama Tits, author Christopher Rice, and this is just to name a few. There's been so many over 7 years of podcasting. Can you believe it? We survived a pandemic, and in many ways, the pandemic was good because people were listening to things like podcasts even more. That's when we started a second show. And if you know, we had a interim show called Sex with Stevie that quickly became Tags Live, and that's when I brought in Kodi Maurice Doggette. I started an OnlyFans just for fans because why not? I've talked so much over 7 years of my own sexuality that why not share my sexuality on camera? And that has been very fulfilling, and I'm really enjoying it. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that. And for the first time in 7 years, actually 10 years, I have a boyfriend that has been really amazing to share those experiences on the show and just be in a relationship and still talk about sexuality. It's been really fulfilling, I have to say. Well, this episode is really my conversation with all of the hosts because I can't really do this show without them, and the show is nothing without my co-hosts. And I thought it'd be fun to get to know each one a little bit more, do a little reflection, and a little bit looking forward. So without further ado, let's get into the interviews with the hosts of Tags Podcast. Oh my God, Jeremy, the OG of Tags Podcast, along with myself. First of all, happy 600.
Yes, it's crazy. I cannot believe it. That's amazing. Cheers to us.
Cheers to us. 2017 was the year, 7 years ago. You were the OG. We said it on the show before, but we were sitting on my living room floor and we came up with the idea. But what was your first thought when I first asked you to be my co-host on a gay sex podcast?
I was definitely excited and nervous at the same time. I think it was just organic. I think the way that it started, I didn't really know much about podcasting, and nowadays I feel
It's
like
everywhere.
everyone has a podcast, and it's like there
Right.
are so many and so many different topics, and yeah, I was excited to like just try a new venture, and I love being a part of it.
So I guess my question next is, how do you think you've grown or changed in your hosting style over the last 600 episodes?
Well, I would say that my uh, inner slut has definitely just retired a little bit, just because I have a boyfriend now, and we've been dating for like 8 months now, and so I think that it it's all like just an evolution of me, and so I think from the beginning I was definitely like running the streets of New York City and working a lot and just like partying it up and having so much fun. And I definitely have a slower paced lifestyle now. And I think that it's for the better. And it's just a different, like a different style and version of me now that I've grown into over all these years being on the podcast.
I would also say though, your style, as you're not known to want to be like on a podium talking, and you've gotten so much more opinionated with good opinions, and you have something to say
Yeah.
about every single topic than say 7 years ago,
Yeah, definitely.
which I think is really
But
cool for
I
the,
think that that happens with time. Like
yeah.
when you start to be able to form what your opinion is and your stance on any certain topic.
Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about how you've grown, but we used to do the show where I'm sitting right now in studio.
Hmm.
Obviously, a pandemic happened. You moved away during the pandemic to back to Massachusetts area from New
Yeah.
York. What do you think are the differences of when we used to do it in studio versus how now life really is virtual?
I think there are like definitely pros and cons for both. I think it was very fun just to get together weekly and do it live and in person, and it was fun to catch up that way. But I think now it's just a different version, so it's kind of just an updated version of getting together still, and that's why I enjoy being a part of it, because we all get to catch up, and even offline where we chat before we talk and everything, it's still just as fun. It's just a different way of doing it, and it's the more modern way because of the fact
Demure.
that so many things are demure and mindful, because so many things are virtual nowadays or remote.
Yes. And at one point, we did a show. We would live stream it at a bar here in Chelsea, where I'm at, in New York, at Rebar. And that was a lot of fun. What are your memories of being on stage? Because when we first asked you to do the show, it was no video behind a microphone. You could just give your opinions. And then all of a sudden, not only are you on stage, but in a bar in New York City. What were your thoughts, and how did you make sense of all that?
I think going into that, I was very nervous, and we talked about it a lot, but I think you talked me through being able to get over that fear, because I've always had a fear of like being in front of the camera, presenting anything really. And so I think having an audience, a live audience, was nerve wracking at first, but then I did end up getting used to it, and it was fun. And when your friends come out and support you, and you see them in the audience too, it makes it even more comfortable and comforting. And I think after a few times, I started to get the hang of it, and definitely got better with time. And then I think when we ended up shooting the pilot in the studio, I was by then definitely more comfortable than just starting out.
Well, you've always had a sassy edge, which is why we like you, and a interesting way of looking at the world, and particularly our LGBTQ world. But has life outside of New York softened that a bit, or because your life is totally different from when you started?
I think it's matured. I think that's the best way to describe it. But I also think that it. I feel like the lifestyle that I lead now is not less gay, but it has aspects that are gay, but it's not entirely everything gay, where I felt like
Immersed,
when
like
I
you
lived
were
in New York,
immersed.
it was fully gay, and like I had a gay roommate and I had only gay friends, and then like
You
maybe a
worked at
few
gay
girls in there,
places.
and I worked at a gay bar and in the leather scene and all of that. So I think that that's the one thing that's changed the most, but not necessarily for bad. I think it's just now I revisit things that are gay, and now I like visit P Town often because it's closer to me here than it was in New York.
Can't get
And
any gayer than that.
no, and that's like totally the most beautiful, amazing destination spot to visit.
Well, you mentioned you talked a little bit about your sex life and how you've met a boyfriend, like you talked about, you dated for 8 months. Were you surprised that you met somebody when you moved back home? Because I know you tried here, and it's so hard to meet a guy in general. I mean, I'm in a new relationship myself, and I was almost ready to like, maybe in this lifetime, I'm not meant to meet anybody else, and then all of a sudden it appeared. What was life like meeting your boyfriend and meeting him where you're at now?
So I think what's funny is that I really do feel like the universe sends you something when you're ready for it. And so I think that a lot of us when we are single are yearning for, or sometimes just on the prowl looking for a serious relationship, and I think that's when it doesn't come your way. I think it falls in your lap when you least expect it. And I also would say uh, my boyfriend is a listener of the podcast, and that's how he actually reached out to
That's
me
right.
via DM, finding out that I was local to him, realizing that I wasn't a New Yorker any longer. And I think we chatted a while online, and I made up so many excuses why I couldn't go out on a date, just to push myself out of my comfort zone. Really change was a game changer, and I think that when I did that, then I was able to see what the possibilities could be relationship wise.
Well, it's funny. I mean, so the show actually brought him to you in many
Yeah,
ways. I mean, that
totally.
he heard you, he had the privilege of seeing you because your picture's online. We promote
Yeah.
it, even though we're not always a video, but you can see your picture. Was there a little bit of that in you that thought, it's a listener? I don't know. I mean, is he a fan? And I don't, or was it also more personal? Like, I don't know that I'm really ready for this, or
I
opening
think
my
it
heart up.
I think it was kind of like uh, a mixture. Like I didn't think that I was ready yet because I just felt vulnerable. But I think when you put yourself in that state, that's the best time for someone to meet you. And I think that I didn't think of him as a fan at all from being a listener. I kind of thought, I wonder what things he listened to or what he remembers from what he listened to. And so it's interesting to have someone meet you in the flesh. And I do think you hear bits and pieces and you kind of know me a little bit from the podcast, but you definitely don't know everything about me. And I think you also gain, you get more personality in person for me than listening to me on the podcast.
Well, you mentioned your boyfriend. We've been talking about him. Let's just quickly dive into sex because we're a sex podcast. Who's
Yes.
more likely to initiate sex and who's more romantic?
I think he's definitely more likely to initiate it. And
Sex.
yes, and I think that we're kind of equal in the romanticism. Like I mean, I'm very touchy feely, so I kind of feel like I'm always hugging him or groping him or grabbing him, but he's
That's so
definitely,
funny. That's me with my boyfriend too. I'm always doing the same thing with.
I'll kiss him all night long. I'll rub him like in the middle of the night when we're sleeping together. It's funny because that being said, I'm not the initiator, which is funny that they don't go hand in hand.
And then who is the more planner? Because we've talked about planning. Planning's so important on daily life. We're all so busy. Who plans more what you're gonna do? Who projects ahead on where we're going to go. I know you're going to come visit me here in New York for your
Yeah.
birthday in December. Was that you? Who's planning?
He's definitely the planner and extremely, extremely organized. I've never met anyone so organized just in life. And we laugh
Are we
and
talking spreadsheets and all for?
like just all organization in every caveat. So like it's funny because we had some friends and family over for a birthday recently, and they gave a tour of the basement of his house, and it's like organized shelves, and it looks like a BJ's like stock room. And then I painted the floor of it so you could literally
Ah,
eat off the floor of the basement because it's organized and it's like it's all charcoal gray, and it's cool because we I've learned a lot of planning skills from him, but he's definitely the ultimate planner, and I'm just learning how to like kind of get in line with that because it does make everything so much easier.
oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And
And I've
lastly,
always been like spontaneous, off cuff, like just not organized, and
and
it's been
lastly,
a learning curve for me.
do you still watch porn? Because at one point you watched a lot of porn, Twitter porn, if I remember. What can
So
you
I
tell us
still
about
do
your porn consumption?
I do watch it, but it's definitely like a lot less, and I think that that's because I did start to realize it, like the unrealistic part of it. And I think watching too much of it is not super healthy for anyone. And
Correct. Yeah.
I find myself watching less of it just because I want those intimate moments to be with him. And so I don't feel guilty watching it, but I'm at the same time, I like want to save it.
Yeah. It's funny. I talked to my boyfriend about it too, and he says, "I'm not seeing anybody else. I'm just using my hand and watching porn when I'm not." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine too." And so, but I mean, I find myself watching less too because we try and make time for definitely intimacy, but definitely
Yeah.
sex. And there's only so many hours in the day, and
Yeah.
we're all. And then there's, I think. A lot of people don't realize that when you're in a relationship too, there's a lot of intimate moments that they don't take the place of sex, but they fill a void that maybe you were looking for when you were
Yeah.
obsessed with sex or just more into looking for sex. And so it's
Yeah.
just a
I
different
agree.
balance that happens.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not something that I've ever been used to because I've dated but not for a long period of time, and I kind of feel like in gay time 8 months is like years or eons. Like it's a certain amount of time where I in the past I feel like I've only had one ex that was like a certain amount of years, and then the rest were all like, oh, a few months or like 2 months or 3 weeks or whatever. So it's
Right.
definitely different. And so, yeah, I would say that I still watch porn, but it's every once in a while. It's not like daily like it used to be when I didn't have a significant other.
I love it. And
Yeah,
that's it. It was painless here. So I want to thank you, Jeremy. You know, you can always follow Jeremy on the gram at J. Ross Lopez. And I want to thank you in particular for 600 episodes, particularly being the OG. I
of
was almost going to
course.
say the OG housewife, but but you are the OG. Cheers to the 600 and hopefully so many more. Lincoln, hello, hello.
Hey, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. Happy 600 episodes.
I cannot believe it's 600 episodes. That when this little baby started so long ago, who would have known? I keep thinking we're at 300. So
Y-
600 is literally double my mindset, right?
Yeah, crazy. I mean, you're in your protein bakery. You
I
just
have my
finished
swirl.
teaching. Yep, I love the swirl. You just finished teaching fat burning Pilates, which I'm going to take soon because I'm at
Oh,
Crunch.
good.
I was going to
I
take
look
it
forward to
today,
seeing you
but
there.
yeah, but 600 episodes later, you're still a constant with the protein bakery, still teaching class. How do you keep it moving doing all of this?
I don't feel I'm a completer. I like to complete things. So until something revolutionary happens, like someone comes and buys the bakery for millions of dollars, or I decide to teach and do this from California or something like that, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. I like being reliable and consistent. So It's important to
I
me.
I love it. Well, as a host, you tell it like it is. You are the adult in our little tags community. You remind us of
That's
adulting, which
cute.
I love. What's been your approach to hosting, and do you care what people think? Actually,
My approach to hosting the podcast has always been to speak my truth. And when you speak your truth, you can't really care what other people think because it's your truth. It doesn't have to be their truth. It doesn't have to be the popular opinion. It could even be wrong, but it's still my truth. And I will continue to do that in every aspect of my life. And what I am noticing lately, which I'm so happy I have the outlet of the podcast, um, is I am finding as I crossed over my 55th year on my last birthday that if people don't hear me or want to fight me or something, I'll just stop talking. Because if you show me that my words don't have value or weight or levity, or that my truth is not important to you, then I'll stop. I'll just hold my tongue. I won't be angry. I won't be bitchy back. It's that great line in Torch Song Trilogy at the end when Harvey Farstein is with Anne Bancroft and they're in that huge fight in the apartment, and he says, "You've pushed me away my whole life, and now you're blaming me for not being here." I love that line. That is one of my favorite lines. So if you push me away, you can't blame me for not being there. You push me away.
and such a good method too, because I think when we're younger, we want to fight back. We're so defensive, and is that part of it? You're less defensive, and if somebody doesn't want to hear you, then that's fine. But it's kind of the problem we see in our country anyway.
Yeah, there is. I agree with that. I still hope and pride that I am an activist for the greater good. I still hope that I'm being a good voice in the community to fight for what's right. You know, the AIDS crisis will never leave my blood system, will never leave my fiber. When I was marching with ACT UP, which was a peaceful community to fight against HIV/AIDS when we didn't know anything. So I don't know if I've grown out of being a fighter. What I have learned, or what has become in vogue, I think, in our language as a civilization, of, look, I just did this. Oh, well, that's not important to me.
Yeah.
But I did it. And it was important to you at one point, or you see how important it is to me. So why are we not acknowledging any of that? It's almost that like you're insecure, you can't handle that I did something. So you're just going to say it's not important.
Yeah.
Frustrating.
No,
Yeah.
you add so much to the show. I love it. One thing is, when you started the show, you were single, but along the way, you met Peter, who is now your fiance. How
Yep.
has your love life changed over this period?
Well, from when I was single, I think I was searching and looking, and I had. How long have you been doing this? 10 years? No.
This is our seventh year doing it.
Seventh
So,
year. Okay,
yeah.
cool. So, like 3 years before this, when I was 45, and I've said this on the show before, I really stopped trying to date and be in a relationship. I just needed to
Right.
like have an overall reset. And the greatest gift of that time in my life, from 45 to 50, 49, was I got to express my sexual liberation and my sexual adventurism with prep,
Yeah.
which I would have never done if I was in a relationship my whole life, unless I did that with my partner. So it was nice to be single and not have those concerns that I used to have about what sex meant in a certain time in our life. But what I did find out, which was before I met Peter, for me, again, for me,
Right.
is all of that sexual adventure and behavior left me a little sad and lonely. And that's when I said, wait a minute, I've had sex with hundreds of people and I still feel really alone. That's not working. How about we try it differently?
And then you met Peter.
Yeah. And then I met Peter shortly after.
I
A
love it.
customer just came into the bakery, so that's going to be part of
Hey,
it. I love
that's
it.
oh,
Hello,
got it.
welcome. It's okay.
So okay, we mentioned that you have your fiance now on our show. We give advice all the time. What can you tell us? What's been the key to the success of you and Peter and keeping it last all these years?
We laugh a lot. That's
That's important. Yes, I
very,
laugh with my
very
boyfriend now so
important.
much. Sense of
Yeah.
humor.
Yeah. Sense of humor and keeping comedy going is super important. We're going to put a protein bakery item and warm it up.
Yes, I love it.
Um, the second thing is to try. Am I still in it? Oh, good. Yeah, you get the
Yeah,
full body
I
shot.
can still hear you.
When it's done, you could grab it. Letting small things go.
Yeah,
Or not even small things. I want to be more specific than that. Sometimes there are big things that I'm like, I'm not going to live my life this way. And then in the long run down the road, I realize, wow, that really wasn't overly important to me. I didn't really, um, something I was so feverishly fighting for is not something that really matters as much as I thought it did. So, how about we look at other things that come up that might not be as important as they used to be to me and let the small stuff go. So while I say it's small stuff,
yeah.
sometimes it's big stuff and I've just evolved.
Yeah, a friend of mine just said this recently on the show too. She said that sometimes you're going to have a bad day, sometimes they're going to have a bad day, and it's knowing when that person's having the bad day and let them have it, and they
Yeah.
just want to be heard. So,
And you don't have to fix it. I mean, we definitely, something in relationship that I've always been very attuned to is one, defaulting to I love you instead of dealing with problems.
yeah,
And are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you
yeah,
stop?
yeah.
Remember that song in Rent? Are you okay?
Yes.
Like, you okay? Like, you can okay yourself into a quandary of not knowing who's okay and who isn't okay. So sometimes just taking a breath is the most important thing.
So you kind of tapped about on this a little bit earlier about how you really sowed your sex positive wild oats before coming on the show, before meeting Peter. But what does sex look like now that you are in your relationship with Peter?
What's nice about Peter and I is we have chosen to be monogamous since the beginning.
Yeah,
And I have to say, that has been the least of our struggles. We don't have a lot of struggles. Um, like employment and money in New York City and traveling
sure.
and family dying and salty pretzel in the hospital. Those are our struggles. I think I got most of it out of my system throughout my relationships in my life. And then that span that I had from 45 to 49. So we have actually a really intimate, beautiful sex life that is nurturing and kind of plays to each other's strengths and also gives our independence of like, I'm not in the mood. Okay. It's not
Right.
your responsibility to have sex with me 24/7. That is something that's very convenient on the apps or when you're single or when it's kind of like sex on demand.
Yeah.
Um, and you can't expect that in a relationship. Sometimes people aren't in the mood, sometimes people are. There are things that I don't like to do sexually that I used to find some stranger to do with. And we just have kind of molded around each other, and sometimes the sexiest thing to do is to cuddle and fall asleep hard for 3 hours.
Oh, isn't that true? Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes you're tired. And so sometimes you
Yeah.
just need to be cuddled up and that is nurturing and that fills a lot of the voids that maybe you were looking for in meaningless on and there's nothing wrong with having your single fun sex
Not at all.
filled nights, but yeah.
Especially if it works for you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Just make sure it works for you and you're not in the habit of doing it to do it.
Exactly.
I think that's what we are, creatures of habit. I actually was listening to a story on NPR that said, I think it was 70% of our day is habit.
Yeah.
That you get up and you brush your teeth and you make the bed and then you make the coffee and then you drink the coffee and then you go to work and then you're like, so much of it is habit. How much is new? You know what I mean? How much is a new thing that you're bringing into it? So Peter and I try and keep things new as much as we can. But we also take care of each other's habits so we can relax and rest a little more.
And lastly, we've been reflecting on the last 600 episodes, but what about now? What are you looking forward to now? And I guess in the near future?
For the podcast
Or just for
life?
your life? Yeah, we just want to hear about you.
Well, I can keep it on the podcast.
Yeah.
Actually, we have been through a dark time. And while
Yes.
Tags is talk about gay sex, we have gotten political over the past 4 years because we've had to. We're gay men in a crisis of democracy, and we can't just talk about gay sex and laugh all the time.
Right.
So I see hope on the horizon. I hope that everyone gets out and votes and doesn't sit at home or vote for a third party. Or, this is not even Democrat Republican anymore. This is a threat to our democracy that we need to get past. And once that's passed, we will hopefully have a president that supports the LGBTQ community in the same way that we embrace every other American, no matter what their orientation is, what their financial level is. And I want to thrive again in that community. It's very hard for me to live when things are dysfunctional.
And all eyes are on us right now because we are, supposedly, the free world here. And so,
yeah. And we've been sold this bill of goods that everything's horrible and disgusting and whatever. So like our America is falling apart, according to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And when that's said over and over again, we go outside and then we look for how we're falling apart. I look forward in the next year, 5 years, 10 years to go out and look at what's working. Not just what's falling apart again.
Lincoln, we love you. You always add so much adulting and everything else perspective to the show. Enjoy debate night tonight. I know you'll be watching.
I will. And here's to another 600. Let's keep doing this, okay?
Exactly. And we're watching it right here at the Protein Bakery in action. I love it too. So again, people can come to the Protein Bakery on West 19th Street closer to 7th Avenue between 6th and 7th. You're there all week, correct?
Yeah, and Siljan's here too. Wave, Siljan.
Yay.
Come visit us anytime.
Love it. Thank you so much. Happy podcasting. Okay, well, I am with the man himself, my sidekick, Kodi Maurice Doggette. Happy 600.
Hello, darling. Happy 600.
So exciting.
What a milestone.
Yeah, it really is. You were part of making that happen. And, just to refresh everyone's memory, you came in, I believe, with a short show that we did during the pandemic called Sex with Stevie, where you would come in at the tail end of it. It was kind of more of a radio show that I kind of was developing, and I would always have a special guest. They were audio. And then you came at the tail end and we would do hot topics. And I realized you were so good at that let's bring you on as a host when we started Tags Live. And as history was told, that ended up taking over Sex with Stevie, which is a much better format. I was looking for a weekly host, and I have to say you've stepped up to the plate and become a co-host, but really a co-producer in many ways. What do you think of initially when you got asked to be on the show to what your experience has actually been?
I was over the moon. I think that we were coming home from a late night out, and we were just chatting, and we were discussing, because I was just coming out of life coaching school, and we were talking about that trajectory and everything that it involved. And you were just like, would you like to come on the podcast? And I was like, of course I would. And then it just evolved into all of what you just said. We started Sex with Stevie, which was so much fun. And I'm glad that we started with that, because I was very nervous those first episodes, and just calling in and being on for that short amount of time. It really helped me get over my nerves and get to more of what I wanted to say and what was true to my heart. So that was an amazing experience. And then, of course, Tags Live has been such a treat and a joy to host with you. So, yeah, it's all good over here.
Yeah, I mean, I love the evolution of it all. And I learned a little something on myself. It's hard to carry the weight by yourself. For I think I did the first 20 minutes on that show, just
Yeah.
me and Hot Topics. And I was telling our other co host, Teddy, not as easy as it seems when you don't really have somebody to bounce off the ideas with. And that's why it's so much better to do it with you, of course.
Yeah.
But what do you say, if you had to, has been your hosting style? And what have you noticed about your hosting style? Has it evolved over the years?
Well, I initially started to bring a more of a coaching aspect to it, and I feel like that has still evolved and it's grown to, we do hot topics and advice all the time, and I feel like coaching has really been paramount in how I host. Now there's another aspect to how I host, and that is I like levity. I like to make serious things a little bit light because they're not all, you can't go through life just living on a serious note. So I always try and inject a little bit of humor with things, except there are certain cases, of course, where you do not inject a little bit of levity because it's a very serious topic and it shouldn't be made light of. But most of the time, and generally speaking, you can find a little bit of humor in some of the things. So I feel like I like to provide a lot of, we're all funny though. So I feel like for me personally, that is something that I like to put into my hosting style.
That is really interesting. I never thought of it that way, but you definitely do bring a lighthearted, even if it's a serious subject, and it makes it more, uh, how do you say that?
Palatable?
Yes, palatable to digest for, I'm
Yeah.
sure, our listening audience. I mean, you're very much known for your infectious laugh. What can you tell us about your laughter that is so infectious? Have you always had that? And what have people told you about your laugh? Because it really is infectious. Some people
Thank
just have that
you.
laugh that is really infectious.
Yeah, I modeled it after RuPaul. No, no. I have
And
always
maybe
had
a
this
little bit
laugh.
of Betty Rubble and Wilma
Oh,
Flintstone. It's that, which I love.
well, you just got it right there. It's a little bit of a dolphin call too. I don't know.
It's great. Yeah, there's some
uh,
breathing going on.
yeah, I've always had this laugh. I feel like me and my mother have very similar laughs, so I think that is where I get it from. I feel like a lot of people in my family have the same laugh, and maybe it's just something from growing up. And but I always used to get comments on it because I, like you said, it's unique. And I feel like a lot of people are, once they hear it and they hear the joy that's behind my laugh, because when I laugh with my whole being. So I think that once they hear it, it becomes, like you said, infectious and in the good way.
It really is, and I love laughter. It's one of my favorite things. My boyfriend, he one of the things, he's very funny, and I love the way he laughs. And so, yeah, very cool. Okay, how has your views on sex, what you think about sex, and what you put out there changed since you started the podcast? Not a loaded question at all.
I know. I was like, oh, okay, Diane Sawyer, we coming with the hard news right now.
Come on, it's just sex.
I know, darling. And I feel like maybe I should start there because I have learned that it is just sex. And I feel like I took it a lot more seriously before. Like it was something that it had to come with a commitment. Once we had sex, we was married most of the time. There are certain exclusions that, of course, I have had. But I feel like over the course of, hosting the show with you and all the other lovely co-hosts, that I have learned that it doesn't have to be anything more than just sex. I'm telling you, I would be in the club hooking up with a guy and I'd be like, oh, I wonder what our wedding night is going to be like. It's so wonderful. No, it's not reality, honey. Oh, Kodi, you need a reality check from new Kodi. But I also feel like, uh, as far as my views on what I share in the podcast, I used to be an open book. Like anything that I thought would come right out of my mouth, and I feel like I didn't give a lot of thought to how I wanted to frame things, because that is really what it's about when it comes to hosting this. You want to express your opinion, and you want to make sure that it lands and it gets across to the people that you are trying to reach out there. So you have to put it in the way that is most effective for it to actually touch people. So I feel like I have learned to do that more and more, and it's just only going to go up from here.
Yeah, and I also feel like as us co-hosts, we've all pushed each other and allowed a runway to be honest and open about our sexuality, because the other co-hosts are saying their honest opinion, and I'm less guarded because of you all. And so we are being really honest, but oftentimes, on Tags Live, we're a lot more prepared because we prep for some of
Oh
these
yeah.
topics more so than, say, the other show, which is a little bit more off the cuff, other than myself that chooses the topics. But
Mm-hmm.
you guys do a really good job of navigating through all of those and giving concise, thoughtful commentary.
And I really want to say we do a great job of holding safe space for each other. I feel like I have never been judged for my opinion, even when we don't agree necessarily. I feel like my opinion is respected, and that means so much to me. I have been in situations where I felt like my thoughts and my views and my opinions were not taken into account. They didn't really, people made me feel like my opinion didn't matter. So I think I really am so thankful for this space, because my thoughts and how I feel about things, you guys really take them to heart. So thank you so much.
Well, we've mentioned that we do a live virtual show, which is live in front of a virtual audience, but we've also done virtual live in Puerto Vallarta in front of a studio
Mhm.
audience. And we've also done live where you've sung for our Patreon Tags community.
We need
Where
a redo on that one. I was not feeling too good. So
we can definitely redo that. But I guess, what's your thoughts about performing in all of these 3 live spaces?
Oh, it's fantastic every single time. I love the live show every week. It's a little bit detached, but I still feel the energy of the people coming through when they leave comments. They try to make me laugh. It's hilarious. It's a kiki every single time. I also really enjoy being there with people in the audience. There's no other feeling like it. I just cannot even quantify it. Just feeling that energy of the people in the room, and there's nothing like it. So, and I have a serious stage fright. So, just leaning into the feeling of people actually being in the room with you, and their immediate reaction to it, there's nothing like it in the world. So I love it. It's become my new addiction, really, because I want to do it more and more and more, and we need to do more live shows, Steves.
We definitely will. I'm taking note of that for sure. Well, when we met you, getting a little bit more personal, you were
Uh-oh.
single. You've had a
Uh-oh. Was
boyfriend
I?
throughout. You've had a boyfriend throughout many of our episodes. You moved in with him, and now you say it's complicated. What can you tell us? Where are you
Oh,
at
Lord.
now that you want to share, and only share what you want to share?
Yeah, I learned that too. Only share what you want to share. Well, I feel like when I first started this show, I was dating someone semi seriously. It was like not even, we went on a couple dates basically, but I was single as hell. And then I met my ex, and quote unquote my ex, and we were tight. We were rolling tough, and then everything went down that went down, and we had we took a break. We broke up, and we were separated from one another, and by distance, by emotionally, and it was a lot. It really, really was. I don't think I've ever been through a breakup like that. But now it is complicated. We are we're connecting again. We're reconnecting. We're rebuilding trust, which I think is very important. And we're learning how to communicate more effectively for the two of us, which we did not have before.
I love it.
So
That's
we're learning lessons. We are taking into account what was the downfall of our relationship previously, and we're taking from that and moving forward, and we're listening to each other better, which I can't profess enough how important that is in a relationship.
Sounds good. I
I
like it.
mean, we're gonna see what happens. I'm
We're
still
going to see
not
what happens.
in.
Watch what happens. Well, we got to talk about you're recently moving to Kansas, where your family lives, to write music. And this was after you and your boyfriend broke up. But you're back in New York. You have an
Yep.
upcoming EP, we think. But what are you looking forward to
Oh,
now?
I just got finished recording one of the first singles off of the EP, and I just had to lay down a couple of ad libs, and I think it is Chef's Kiss. I sing it on the live show, but I have to redo that. We have to redo that live show because I want to really introduce it to everybody, and I can't wait for all of that to come out. I am still, working on one song I have to sing, and half of another one, but it's coming. I just have to get it to the mix and masterer, and all that's going to be good to go very
Love
soon.
it. And lastly, what does it mean to be a part of Tags and the Tags family?
Oh, you guys are really some of my best friends now. It is so lovely to be with you guys and connect and really dive into each other and support each other and have that connection with other gay men. It is so important to me personally because I feel like I have people that understand me now, and that I'm not going to say that I never had that before, but it's always such a blessing when you have it in your life at any certain time. So right now, I'm so thankful for you guys because you teach me so many things. You support me unconditionally, and I love you guys.
Well, we love you back, and so do our listeners. And I want to thank you. And you can always follow Kodi on the gram at Mr. Maurice, at Mr. Maurice. He mentioned he's a life coach. You can follow him at KMD Coaching. And new music's coming out. I know you have a crowdcast, or a crowdsourcing funding source.
Yep, I just launched
Do you
it
want to
today.
announce it here? We'll keep announcing
We can do it
it
on Tags Live.
Okay, we'll
but
do it on a Tags Live. We'll list all that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Thank you so much. Love you.
All right. Love you too. I'll see you in like 10 minutes.
Yes. And I'm joined by the lovely, talented, smart Teddy Alexis. Happy 600, Teddy.
Oh my God. We are that old.
We are that old. I know. In podcasting land and gay land, that is ancient for sure.
We're like, ancient times, Greek, Roman, basically.
Exactly. I've got to start off because you were a listener of Tags podcast that eventually became the Anna Navarro of Tags, that we like to say, and became one of the co-hosts. Do you remember when you started listening to Tags and what drew you in?
I absolutely remember. I just moved to LA, and I was trying to be out there more sexually, and because I went to school for so much and was such a nerd that I never really got to explore that side a lot. So I was being, purposeful about it. So I started looking for, like, what are the ideas and what are the boys doing out there? Because I'm still a nerd. So better to listen to a podcast than go out there and, So I literally searched gay sex on the Apple podcast, and you guys came in. There was 2 podcasts, and because you were Rodriguez, so am I.
Yes.
Yeah, no relation, but a strong friendship.
Absolutely.
And I was like, oh, absolutely. And you guys were probably maybe like half a season in. So because I remember I went back and listened to a couple of episodes. So I had tags for like weeks, right? I would like listen to an episode a day. And then, I've been through all the interactions as a listener, always trying to comment here and there, send you guys stuff.
I think what really drew us in with you is when we started doing our live broadcasting. You were one of the early ones that tuned in. You would often comment, and we liked your comments. And I think we met you in person at some point. Is that what happened?
No, what happened, how I have it, we all have
Yeah,
different stories, right?
yeah, right.
It's that you were doing a live and Kodi couldn't make it and you were doing it by yourself. And for
That's
some
right.
reason, the live was open. So I just joined because I've been a guest before promoting one of my short films. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
And I'm like, let me help Steve out.
Yeah, that's right. I decided to, which we will never do again, it's funny because there was a interim period where I did a show
Hmm.
called Sex with Stevie that
Hmm.
precluded Tags Live. And it was during the pandemic, the beginning
Right.
of the pandemic. And I just wanted to try out something new that
Hmm.
was just going to be me talking. And I would bring in almost like radio.
No.
Kodi came in. We introduced Kodi. He would come in at the tail end and we do
Right,
hot
right, right.
topics. And I would have a guest. So I had about 20 minutes of my own having to host the show solo. 20 minutes is one thing if you know you're going to be fulfilled with like a special guest and a co-host at the end
Hmm.
and filter comments, but to try and do the whole show, and I think you could see on Tags Live that one episode I tried to do on my own that I was struggling a little bit
Hmm.
because we forget that you now know because you co-host on the show too. We plan these things out. We plan the topics. We talk
Right.
about them, and there's nobody to really bounce it off of.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's right. You saved the day, and from that point on, we realized that oh my gosh, Teddy would be a great co-host, and we labeled you the Anna Navarro of Tags Podcast. So
Yeah.
I love
And
it.
that
Well,
was so I was doing like sub for a little bit sub, and
yeah,
then
just
on
like Anna.
500 once when you officially invited me to be part of
Exactly.
this,
At
which
500, 100 episodes
uh-huh,
ago. That's so
exactly.
great. Well, I wanted to ask, I've been asking the other co-hosts, what's
Okay.
your approach as a co-host that you bring to the show? I mean, you're very smart and intellectual. You're a
Hmm.
PhD. We'll get into a little bit more about your background, but
Sure.
what do you think your style is that you bring to Tags?
Definitely research. When specifically the live because the pre-recorded is a little different, but when I'm doing the lives, I study all the topics inside out. I You will send us an article, but I will go far and beyond and look for more articles, and sometimes I will look at documentaries if I had time. So I prepare like it's a class because that's my strong suit. So that's what I bring. I think is just and try to do a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
So I know Kodi. If I'm co-hosting with Kodi, he will like have like something to levitate, like something funny or something like that, and then I'm like, well, let me try to make like something more serious, and then kind of pull the rug a little bit on Kodi and like have some fun that way.
Well, you mentioned
Yeah.
Kodi,
Uh huh.
and you and Kodi host Tags Live whenever I can't do the show if I'm traveling somewhere. But both of you have such an amazing chemistry that really, I think, is really infectious. I've told Kodi this before. What do you attribute that to, and how do you like hosting with Kodi?
Um, I don't know. I just think just we're just so in terms of our wit, we're like very similar. We have very similar backgrounds as well. But it's not that we hang out a lot. We are bi-coastal.
Right.
So we really seen each other like a handful of times in person. It's a je ne sais quoi that they say for like it's there's magic in the air.
Well,
Um
you make good video live podcasting, the two of you. Well,
oh,
you're a
thanks.
triple threat. You are a writer, you're a director, and you're an actor.
Mhm.
For our audience that didn't know that, you have short films out. Out of those three, what do you prefer the most, and
Ooh.
why?
Um, when I do all three at the same time, that's a good time. It's also a hard time. I like the power of directing
Okay, she likes to
a
tell us what to
lot.
do.
Yeah, and an acting booking is kind of rare these days, so I really enjoy those as well. So there's not a clear answer which one I prefer, just that I enjoy them differently.
Got it. And now you mentioned on the show. Oh, actually, I meant to also ask anything that you're working on that's going to be out that we can look out for.
Nothing in terms of film. I'm directing a show within my school, which is really rare for somebody that works part time to get a gig like that. So I
Yeah.
will be able to, for that semester, not even teach classes and just live off that. So I'm really excited about next semester. So I'm prepping for that because it's gonna be a lot of work, but I'm really excited. And I got one of my friend writers to get produced through the school, which is really cool.
And real quick, for those
Mhm.
that don't know, what
Yeah.
is your expertise and what do you teach currently? What's the practice? Is it LGBTQ studies?
Oh no, I
Oh, I
wish.
thought it was because I studied that a little bit in
Yeah.
UC Berkeley, and I loved my
Mhm.
instructor back in
Mhm.
the '90s. But I thought you would be so great. But
So my PhD is in theater, and I do bring an
oh,
LGBT lens to my classes, because believe it
a
or
little
not,
celluloid closet to your
yeah, but it goes back to the Greek times. I mean,
yeah.
these people were literally so gay. Uh, so I always bring that into my classes, and I also teach physics because I have a master's in physics. So
Oh my
that's my,
God,
but
physics.
that's my good money maker right there. So yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize that. That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's
Hmm.
okay. Okay. You mentioned you were a nerd and trying to learn about sex when you years ago were searching for a
Uh-huh.
show. You found our show, but how would you say your sex life has changed over the recent years or over the recent 600 episodes?
Oh my goodness, a lot. I've most of it also been a sexual health, which
Yeah.
is something that I really appreciate this podcast in being up to. Things like when you all started the podcast, that you couldn't even get the HPV vaccine, remember? And
Yes.
then we got it. And literally, because of this podcast, I went to my doctor and said, I want this vaccine. And he said, it's not out for adult men yet. I'm like, yes, it is. You need to look it up. And then he said, oh, yeah, it is. So things like that, PrEP, DoxyPep, all of those things I learned through the podcast. And the fun stuff is that I've been more out there. I've been to sex clubs for the first time. Those are always fun. Uh, Kind of more daring of what I wanted sexually, because it was part. If I was seeking it out this way through the podcast, it meant that was something that I needed to be fulfilled as a human being. And now I feel very fulfilled sexually.
I love it. Yeah, that's so great. Well, so if sex is something that you've learned a lot about, health and all, where are you at with sex right now? Are you looking for sex and more open, looking for more of a relationship, or where are you currently at? Or kind of in the middle somewhere?
Well, there's an announcement I'll make later, but
Okay, yeah, we talked about it offline, but we won't, nothing to say right this moment.
no comment.
Yeah, right.
But also, I had a hot summer, and you guys also participated in
We
that because you took me out, and I had a great time. So I'm adventurous, I will say, and living the moment just fully. I think that what it taught me, it's that you know that part of the human expression, and one of the maximum expression is to love one another, and the physical aspects of it are not only fun but also loving. So I feel like I'm more adventurous and a better lover.
Yeah, that seems to be the common theme that a lot of us seem to have right now, at least as hosts on the show, is that
Mhm.
we were like a pendulum at one point where we were all about the sex and then we were deprived of it. Dare
Mhm.
we mention that COVID period where we didn't have any of it, at least contact wise. And then
Mhm.
we came out of it and we were ravenous for
Right,
sex.
right.
And now a lot of us, it seems a theme I keep seeing is, you know, blending that sex life, but with finding meaningful relationships too. And they can come in all sorts of ways too. It could be friendships too, but also putting some effort into finding somebody that's kind of special too, and that you could hopefully explore sex with. So,
Absolutely. So all lives in a spectrum, right? So it could
yeah.
be just sex all the way through an expression of love through sex as well, but it's still sex and it can still be fun and not feel guilty about it because there's only one life and one body, right?
Yes. Well, I hope we have more interactions with you. I hope I come to LA
Absolutely,
or you're
please.
back in New York soon because we had so much fun on a recent outing. But,
Amen.
you can always follow Teddy. Follow him on the gram at Teddy Alexis. Anything else in ways too early to promote anything?
I will post anything that I have coming up on Instagram, and there's a bunch of movies and clips on my YouTube at Teddy Alexis as well.
Oh, great. Your YouTube channel at Teddy
Mhm.
Alexis. Perfect. Subscribe to that. Teddy, as always, I want to thank you. You're such an asset to this show. You bring the brains, the wit, and you help us think outside of the box. We couldn't do the show without you. And here's to 600.
Happy 600, guys.
Well, here's to 600. Here's to 600 more. I really want to thank you, our listener, because we couldn't do this show without you. And you are our other co-host along this journey that we are on. I want to thank you so much. And let's keep it going. And remember, in the meantime, continue having hot, gay sex.